Hey everybody, Weston with Carey Concealment, and today I want to talk about why and when you should use a thigh strap and the thigh strap hanger. Let's get into some examples. Pretty sure I just stepped in some dog poop over there. So for today's example, I'm going to be using the Blade Tech mid drop that you can see here and the TSH along with the thigh straps that we sew in-house. If you can see here, the TSH fits behind the Tech mount adapter. This is, think of this as a improved QLS system. This was made by Blade Tech more recently. I really like this. It allows for a lot more of adjustment in rotation and things like that. Really strong lockup, things like that. But the TSH mounts behind it, and the screw and the post are configured in such a way that they're actually tightened all the way down, yet the TSH is still loose. And that's intentional, so that when you're moving around, your leg can articulate and the mid drop is going to stay still. All right, so this is the part of the video where you guys are going to spend a decent amount of time looking at my crotch. But anyways, let's go over this setup. So what I've got here is the Garrison belt by Core Essentials. This is an 1 3/4 inch, relatively stiff, heavy-duty EDC belt, and I've got it fed through a USGI padded outer belt. This is a really great combination for the winter because I can put it on the outside of all my clothing, and in combination with a thigh strap, I don't have to worry about the belt bouncing around too much. Usually the weight of all the kit keeps it down. It's more an obstacle of keeping it up in my case because I wasn't blessed with a dump truck. So let's go into this setup. So I've got the same Blade Tech mid drop here with Tech mount, and then on this setup, today we're using an X1 Raptor. This is the revised unit with the internal bridge rather than external. And I've got this set up more or less how I would for competition. The holster is about 230, it's not quite 3 o'clock. I've got it rolled a little bit further forward like I would for a USPSA event. I've got the firearm slightly canted rearward to just kind of go along with my grip. And I've got the thigh strap undone, okay? It's not connected at all. Now the X1 is a light retention holster. It's got a magnet down at the bottom. It gives it just enough retention, but a little shake and the gun's gonna come right out. So this is what I would say is minimal retention for competition. Now, what you'll see is because this belt is an 1 3/4 inch belt, it's not absurdly stiff like a competition belt. When I go to draw this holster, there's still going to be a decent amount of deflection, and you'll see that while I draw. All right, now I've got the thigh strap on. It's not even all that tight, but you're gonna see the difference here in the deflection. And I can tell you just during the draw process that this feels infinitely more stable. All right, so that's one example with what I would call a relatively soft belt in an outer sort of configuration. And you can see that the difference between with and without the thigh strap is pretty dramatically changing the amount of deflection we have, even on a holster with very, very light retention. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to this holster. This is a prototype level 2 that I've been playing around with in the shop. I've been testing this particular level 2 mechanism, but this holster has 2 levels of retention. So it has the trigger guard here where the X1 does not, and then it's got the hood. So what I'm gonna show you first is the normal level 1 passive holster retention, like what you would get from a lot of major holster companies. Just the holster holding on to the trigger guard, and then we're gonna change the retention just by using the screws and see what that does to the draw. It's got a little bit of retention on it. You can hear that Kydex pop, but it's fairly light. I can shake the gun out pretty easily. So let's put this on the belt, do some draws without the thigh strap on. And I think what you're gonna see is quite a bit of movement because there's gonna be friction on the trigger guard during the draw. So let's check this out. All right, again, thigh strap is off. This is just the level 1 retention here. It's gonna be pretty intentional. One of the things you can really get into when you're running a holster like this that just has normal trigger guard sort of retention is that if you implement a twisting motion into the grip when you draw, that trigger guard is going to get into that indentation and bind up a little bit more than it would otherwise, and you'll get that. So you really got to focus on making sure your draw is clean, and it can be helpful to do a video like this of yourself to make sure that your draw is nice and clean. If you're putting in a lot of input, that's something you can fix on your draw, or it's something you may be able to adjust in your mid drop. All right, so this time let's do that same setup. Haven't changed the retention on this at all. All I've done is add the thigh strap, and let's see if I can get some more consistent draws here. This feels like a completely different holster now. It's just completely stable. I still have that retention, click, haven't changed anything, but it's infinitely easier to use this. Okay, so what we've seen so far is that even with a fairly light retention on a level 1 holster, you can still have some issues with binding and getting a little bit of holster flip. It's the nature of having a mid drop. All the fulcrum is just down so far that if your grip is a little bit wonky, you can really run into some trouble. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna crank down this retention, because say I'm a guy that is doing tactical games or something like that, I cannot afford for this gun to come flying out, and maybe I don't have a level 2 holster. So what I've done, that's actually quite a bit of retention, is I've just cranked down on this screw closest to the trigger guard, and now this thing is not coming out. It's gonna take a seriously good draw to get this thing out of the holster. And what you're gonna see without the thigh strap is that it is gonna be holster flipping and going crazy. I have seen this with every major manufacturer's holsters that are of this similar configuration. It's just physics, really. So I'm gonna throw this on, take the thigh strap off, try to do a few clean draws. I'm gonna have to focus really, really hard on making sure that I'm doing a clean vertical draw. And then we're gonna add the thigh strap and see if it's any better with a ton of retention. I would say this is almost locked in, so let's see. Okay, here we go. Lots of retention, no thigh strap. This is probably gonna be rough. Oh yeah, there's a bad one. Let's try again. No good. Nice and straight. So I've got so much retention. I'm holding the mid drop here and I can get it, but it is trying to deflect on me pretty badly. So let's go ahead and add the thigh strap. And again, this is like beyond the use case of what this holster is designed for, but just to prove a point, I've now got the thigh strap, haven't changed the retention at all, and I can grip and rip that thing out of there. So it's taking what was otherwise completely broken setup and giving me the stability I need to be able to get this gun out of the holster. So is this realistic? No, this is to prove something, and hopefully I did that by demonstrating that. All right, we're rounding the corner here to finishing this conversation. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that crazy retention off the holster, get this thing back to essentially no retention. Why would I do that? Well, I'm gonna give it just a tad bit more because I'm not trying to be completely crazy, but I have on this holster a level 2 device. Now with this hood in place, this gun, it may come loose out of its little normal level 1 retention zone, but the hood's gonna keep it in place no matter what until it has been activated. So in a level 2 holster, you do not need to run a crazy amount of trigger guard retention because you have a second layer of security right here. Now when I go to draw this firearm out of the holster without a thigh strap, I'm probably gonna have a much better time of it. Again, it will be even easier once the thigh strap is engaged, but let me show you what that looks like. Alrighty, so what we've got here is the level 2 device. Almost no retention on the holster itself. Get that bad Larry on here. And what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and deactivate the level 2. Oh, I gotta pull this thing off. And these draws are super easy because there is virtually no retention on this holster, having no issues at all. And when I go to put the thigh strap on here, it's even more stable. It feels amazing. And now with the level 2 device, this feels very stable, and I can trust that the firearm's not coming out because of that level 2, and I still get a clean draw. So this is a great setup. All right, so there's one more thing that we can take into account here, and that's the belt selection. And there is definitely a difference between what a competition belt can provide you with rigidity versus a standard belt. Now, like we talked about earlier, this belt, the Core Essentials Garrison 1 3/4 belt. This is not the most stable platform. It is very comfortable, it's very easy to use. But if you're strictly a competition shooter, you're most likely going to be interested in something like this. This is the Core Essentials C1, C2? I don't remember which number in the C category it is. But regardless, this belt is absurdly stiff. Now there are even stiffer belts out there like the Double Alpha Lynx, or I think even the normal Double Alpha belt is a little stiffer than this. But this is an inner-outer combo, and I'm gonna throw this on. I've still got the same combination on here of mid-drop and thigh strap, and we're gonna see if it makes much of a difference as compared to the OWB like overt Garrison setup. Now, is this the premier option for competition hangers? Absolutely not. Something like the Boss or the Henning T1000 are much more widely used, but because I'm constantly switching holsters around and things like that, the tech mount system is just a little too easy for me. So I'm using this today. All right, now one of the issues with running a setup like this in the winter is that I've got a sweater in the way now. So I'm gonna have to pull this up, expose the inner belt, get this thing lined up right where I want it. First world problems here. But this belt has the ratchet just like all the core belts do. And the inner belt is supposed to compress to a certain degree, and it does. If you're doing a belt like this, you're probably doing a competition holster. So we'll get the X1 Raptor on here. And then I'm gonna get this belt adjusted where I like it for USPSA, which is essentially sitting right on top of my thigh here at about the 230 position. That feels pretty good. All right, let's get into the testing. And we're gonna see probably some deflection, hopefully a little less than the Garrison overt combo I showed earlier. Let's see. That's kind of aggravating. Let's tuck this out of the way. There we go. Getting some pretty nice clean draws. Let's be a real professional and shove our sweater right in the holster. Hoodies are absolutely awful for this because of this pocket here. So don't recommend that at all. All right, we're getting some pretty clean draws. Let's add the thigh strap, see what kind of difference we get. Sling that bad Larry around. And for those of you wondering, USPSA did make this legal recently. So yeah, if you're a diehard USPSA guy, you can now run a thigh strap with a competition setup. It's not a problem. If you PCSL guys, definitely need to be doing this.
All right, just a point of clarification. It was not an additional rule added to the USPSA rule book, but in fact the omission of certain text from 5272 and 528, specifically regarding Leos and the ability to run more duty style gear, but now it is open up to everyone to run thigh straps, so that is confirmed.
Okay, here we go. So same setup, haven't changed a thing, just added a thigh strap. Let's see what this holster does. Oh my gosh, it feels absolutely rock solid. That's nuts, though. All right, should we scoop?
For those of you who are not familiar with the scoop draw, it is an advanced technique. It can save a little bit of time on the draw, but it is really something you got to be careful with. It's a good way to put a hole in your foot. So if you haven't done it before, dry fire.
The scoop is where it's at with this holster. It's pretty nutty. I am absolutely destroying my thumb on the edge of this SIG optic though, so that's not cool. Alrighty, well, hopefully I have articulated myself well enough so that you guys learn something here. Whether or not you're running a competition setup or something a little bit more overt like this setup, either way, no matter how stiff your belt is or isn't, the thigh strap is going to make a fairly significant difference in the amount of deflection you're going to get during the draw of your holster. It doesn't really matter if you're running a standard level 1 normal retention holster or you've got a competition holster or even a level 2 holster. There are always benefits to be had with the extra stability from the thigh straps, which is why you're seeing so many people move towards using them. I don't think this is one of those Instagram fad things. I think this is legitimately a serious improvement in your gear. There are some guys that absolutely cannot stand thigh straps. Why might that be? Well, my guess, having not talked with a lot of these guys, my guess is that They were probably dudes that spent a lot of time hiking around, walking in the military or some sort of private security, and these things could probably chafe you on a long hike. If you're a guy that's gonna go for a long ruck and you're not likely to need your sidearm, probably don't run one, or have it on your equipment and then just don't put it around your leg. You could stow it with some one wrap, still have an option to run it, just get it out of the way, because definitely for a long hike, this is probably not something you want to do. For competition, I say it's a 100% a must-have. Guys that are looking for every little bit of extra performance, this gives you some. For guys that are running battle gear setup like this, if you're running an overt outside belt like this, you absolutely need to run it, because it's going to give your whole belt configuration a lot more stability. But if you have something like a dual layer belt and you've got a good level 2 holster and your belt's reasonably stiff, you can get away with not needing a thigh strap. I just think there's such a clear advantage to running one. Yeah, I'm biased. I'm gonna try to sell you guys TSHs and thigh straps, but I seriously think it's worth doing. This was a whoopsie daisy of a product years ago, and it's turned into our #1 seller outside of the X1. So hope you guys learned something today. If you wanna see any more gear reviews like this, not so much industry gear reviews, but just stuff that Carey Concealment makes, please let me know what you're interested in seeing. We're gonna be trying to put out a little bit more content like this as part of the marketing strategy in 2025. So thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share with your friends so that they can get informed on some gear like this. It's seriously cheaper than some single magazines. Like a TSH thigh strap combo costs less than a P320 mag. So it's a no-brainer. Take care, guys.